I never expected the world outside my room to feel so different, so sharp, so judgmental. But stepping into it like this, like her, was a kind of terror I couldn't have imagined. I dressed carefully, almost obsessively, in clothes that had suddenly become foreign extensions of my new body, soft fabrics that clung to curves I had never known, skirts that hit just above my knees, and a delicate blouse that emphasized the narrowness of my waist. Every fold, every seam, every subtle movement of fabric made me painfully aware of how different I looked. The first hurdle was breakfast. My family seemed normal, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. Yet, when I entered the kitchen, I felt the weight of their eyes. Or maybe it was my imagination. Mom smiled warmly. "Morning, sweetie." Her voice sounded normal, but the word sweetie struck me like a bell. My hands shook slightly as I poured my cereal, spilling milk over the edge. Dad hummed at the table, glancing at me once. "You're looking different today," he said casually, though I could swear he was examining me from head to toe. My stomach knotted. Different. That was the understatement of the century. I wanted to say something, scream, explain, plead, but my voice, my new voice, faltered. It was high, soft, and feminine, almost unrecognizable. Yeah, I croaked, trying to sound casual, which only made me sound awkward. Breakfast passed in a blur. My siblings whispered, giggling under their breath, and I caught snippets of words. New hair, so soft, cute. Every word, every glance, felt like a magnifying glass pressing into my chest. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like everyone could see not just my body, but my panic, my fear, the trembling core of who I had been yesterday. The real test came when I had to leave the house. The bus ride, which had always been routine, became a nightmare of stares and silent judgments. People looked, some with curiosity, some with open fascination. I hunched my shoulders, clutching my bag like armor, pretending to be invisible. But there was no pretending. Every step, every glance reflected back the reality I had been trying to ignore. I was different. At school or work, the disruption escalated. My friends, people who had known me my whole life, reacted in ways that ranged from wide-eyed disbelief to barely concealed amusement. "Wow, you look amazing," one friend said, a mixture of awe and hesitation in their voice. Amazing? The word made me flinch, a mix of shame and embarrassment curling in my chest. Amazing wasn't what I felt. I felt terrified, humiliated, trapped in a body that wasn't supposed to be mine. Every interaction became a minefield. Conversations felt surreal. I laughed when expected, nodded when necessary, but every smile felt like an act, every word a careful construction. My mind raced with endless scenarios. What if someone asked me a personal question? What if someone noticed my trembling hands or my awkward stance? What if they discovered the truth? Even routine tasks became fraught with anxiety. Reaching for the stapler on my desk, I was hyper-aware of how my fingers moved, how my wrists flexed differently. Sitting in meetings, I could feel the weight of every glance, subtle glances that lingered a second too long, measuring, judging. I longed for invisibility, yet I had never felt so conspicuous. The whispers were the worst. I could hear them, low and almost conspiratorial. "Did you see her today? She looks different. I can't believe it, she..." Each fragment shredded my composure, leaving me simultaneously furious and humiliated. I wanted to confront them, to demand an explanation, but my voice betrayed me again. High-pitched, trembling, hesitant. It was the sound of someone else entirely. Family gatherings became arenas of internal conflict. Cousins I had joked with effortlessly now looked at me with subtle fascination, their eyes scanning, assessing. My parents' concern was visible, though muted. "Are you okay?" Mom asked, her voice gentle, careful. "Do you need anything?" The kindness was suffocating. I wanted to scream that nothing could fix this, that no amount of reassurance could undo the reality staring back at me in every mirror, every reflective surface. Yet, even in this chaos, there were moments that forced me to confront a strange, undeniable truth. People responded to me differently. Compliments, though awkward and often accidental, made my heart beat in ways I hadn't experienced before. Attention, though overwhelming, stirred a mixture of panic and curiosity. Could I enjoy this? Could I navigate the world like this and survive it? The tension inside me built with every hour. My classmates, colleagues, neighbors, everyone's eyes felt like tiny pinpricks, reminding me that I was no longer the person I had been. I began noticing subtle micro-behaviors in myself. The way I adjusted my hair compulsively, the way I crossed my legs differently, the way I modulated my voice when someone approached. It was exhausting, a constant performance I hadn't agreed to, yet one I couldn't escape. Lunch was another ordeal. Sitting with friends, trying to eat normally, I felt every gaze like a spotlight. A casual comment about my new appearance sent my heart racing. "You look so different," someone said, hesitating. Different. The word rang in my ears, a cruel echo. I forced a laugh, but it was hollow, unnatural. I was living in a body that didn't belong to me, in a world that suddenly felt like a stage where every glance and whisper mattered. By mid-afternoon, I was mentally exhausted. Each step, each interaction drained me. My reflection in the restroom mirror was almost unbearable. I stared at the face that wasn't mine, tracing the lines, the softness, the curves, trying desperately to anchor myself in familiarity, but there was none. I washed my hands, touched my face again, and realized with a sinking heart that there was no turning back. The transformation was total, complete. The girl in the mirror wasn't going away. I began avoiding eye contact, keeping to the edges, trying to blend in. But no matter how hard I tried, I felt the world's scrutiny pressing in, reminding me of what I had lost, or perhaps, what I had been given. The constant tension, the fear of discovery, the whispers and laughter, they were relentless, but somewhere beneath it all, a seed of something new was taking root. By the time I returned home, I was physically and emotionally drained. I closed the door behind me and leaned against it, sliding to the floor. My heart was still racing, my mind spinning. How could one night do this? How could one night redefine everything I had known about myself? And yet, I couldn't deny a flicker of fascination. Perhaps, amidst the terror, the embarrassment, and the panic, there was a chance to explore, to understand a side of myself I had never dared to. Perhaps I could discover something unexpected in this new reality. But the world outside was harsh, unrelenting, and every interaction reminded me that I was now navigating it in a form that was entirely foreign. As night fell, I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker, my reflection in the glass staring back at me. I was here. Fully present, fully transformed, fully vulnerable. And somewhere deep inside, I realized that surviving this new reality would require more than hiding or pretending. It would require confronting the world, and myself, head-on, even if it terrified me beyond measure. And so, the struggle began. A struggle not just to hide, not just to survive, but to understand, to adapt, and perhaps, eventually, to embrace. The house was finally quiet. The soft hum of the heater, the faint ticking of the clock, and the distant sounds of traffic outside were the only things keeping me grounded. I locked my bedroom door, not because I wanted privacy from anyone in particular, but because I needed a sanctuary to face this new me. A me I barely recognized, yet one I couldn't stop thinking about. I stood in front of the mirror again, slower this time, more deliberate. My hands traced the lines of my face, the softened jaw, the delicate curve of my cheeks, the fullness of my lips. Every touch sent a shiver down my spine. It was no longer fear driving me, it was curiosity. A deep, almost forbidden curiosity about this body, this identity that had been forced upon me overnight. I had never been one for clothes, for fashion, or for what society labeled as feminine. But now, as I pulled the silky blouse over my shoulders, the sensation of the fabric against my skin felt electric. My body moved differently in it, every sway of my hips accentuated by the narrow cut. The skirt I had hesitantly chosen for the evening draped perfectly along the curves of my legs, emphasizing what had yesterday been non-existent. My reflection now seemed to hold secrets I had never been privy to, secrets that were just beginning to whisper to me. I caught sight of my hair cascading past my shoulders and, on impulse, ran my fingers through it. The strands were soft, lighter than I expected, and carried a subtle sheen under the dim bedroom light. My lips parted unconsciously, eyes wide as I observed the stranger I had become. My reflection tilted its head, as though daring me to explore further. And explore I did. I reached for the makeup I had found tucked in the drawer, items I had never touched before, lip gloss, eyeliner, mascara. My hands trembled as I applied a thin line of eyeliner, just enough to accentuate my eyes without feeling overpowering. The effect was mesmerizing. My eyes seemed to open wider, more expressive, more alive. The mascara made my lashes flutter naturally, and I caught myself smiling at the effect. Was this vanity? Or was it simply discovery? Next came the lipstick, a soft pink shade that made my lips shine like they had a life of their own. I traced the curve of my mouth slowly, observing the way light reflected off the glossy surface. I couldn't believe this was me. My heart thudded in a strange rhythm, part panic, part exhilaration. Every inch of my body, every subtle line and curve, was now something to experiment with, to discover. I tried moving, testing how my body responded to different gestures. The sway of my hips, the tilt of my head, the lift of my chin. It all felt alien and yet intoxicating. Even my voice, which had betrayed me earlier, seemed to carry new power when I experimented with tone, softness, and cadence. I hummed softly, listening to the resonance of my own voice filling the room. It was like learning a new language, one that belonged to me now, one that I could mold, shape, and explore. Then came the clothes experiment. I had brought out outfits I would have never imagined wearing before: a fitted dress, high-heeled shoes, delicate jewelry. Slipping into the dress, I felt an unexpected thrill. The fabric hugged my body perfectly, accentuating the curves I had only recently discovered. The heels made my legs look longer, my posture straighter, my movement more deliberate. I wobbled at first, feeling unsteady, but with each step around the room, I gained a tiny measure of control. I twirled, laughed quietly at the unfamiliar grace I possessed, and marveled at the reflection that followed every motion. I experimented with poses in front of the mirror, practicing expressions, glances, and gestures that matched this new persona. There was a sensuality, yes, but also a power in it, a confidence I hadn't known before. I touched my collarbone, the curve of my waist, and the swell of my chest, feeling the soft, undeniable reality of my transformation. My breathing became shallow, quickened by the thrill and the intimacy of these moments alone. Voice practice became another ritual. I whispered sentences, repeated phrases, mimicked the way I imagined women might speak in subtle tones, rising and falling with gentle modulation. Each attempt brought laughter, frustration, and fascination all at once. The voice, combined with my movements and expressions, slowly felt like an extension of this new identity rather than an imposition upon it. Even my senses had changed. I noticed details I never had before: the subtle scent of my lotion mingling with the faint fragrance of the room, the softness of fabrics brushing against skin, the delicate pressure of shoes against my feet. It was overwhelming at times, but also intoxicating. I realized that this was more than just a transformation of appearance. It was a transformation of perception, of experience, of existence itself. Hours passed in this private exploration. I tried different outfits, experimented with makeup, posed, walked, and even whispered to myself, marveling at the stranger in the mirror. There were moments of doubt, fears of permanent change, of social rejection, but those were eclipsed by the thrill of discovery. I felt alive in ways I hadn't imagined, discovering facets of myself that had been dormant or inaccessible before. I even began to document small moments, taking pictures with my phone, examining angles, poses, expressions. Each photo revealed new possibilities, new ways to inhabit this body, this identity. I realized that the world outside would judge, mock, or misunderstand, but here, alone, I was free to explore, to experiment, to be whoever I wanted to become. In the quiet of the night, I allowed myself a tentative smile. Perhaps this wasn't merely a punishment or an experiment imposed by someone else. Perhaps, buried within this strange, terrifying, exhilarating transformation, was an opportunity. A chance to explore, to grow, to uncover sides of myself I had never known. I traced my fingers along my jawline once more, softly, reverently. The face in the mirror, my face now, looked back with curiosity, with a hint of mischief. And somewhere deep inside, I felt the first spark of something dangerously thrilling. The realization that I could embrace this, even enjoy it, even if the world outside wasn't ready to understand. For the first time since the transformation began, I felt a strange kind of control, a delicate, fragile sense of power. I was still me, and yet I was not. I was learning, experimenting, discovering, and slowly, impossibly, I was beginning to like what I saw. And as I settled into bed that night, exhausted but exhilarated, I whispered to the mirror one last time, maybe, just maybe, this is who I was always meant to be, at least, a side of me I never allowed to exist. The next morning, I woke with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Today wasn't going to be like the days before. Today, I would leave the safety of my room and face the world fully as me. My reflection in the mirror no longer startled me. In fact, I almost recognized her, the girl I had been discovering in secret, the one who had frightened me, exhilarated me, and now somehow empowered me. I dressed with careful precision, but instead of fear, there was anticipation in my movements. I chose a fitted dress in a soft pastel shade, paired with heels that made my legs feel long and strong. My hair fell naturally over my shoulders, styled but effortless, and my makeup was subtle yet flattering, enhancing the new me without screaming for attention. Every detail was deliberate, a small celebration of the body I had come to inhabit. The walk outside was surreal. The air, the sounds, even the city itself seemed to notice me differently. People glanced, not in judgment, but in curiosity, admiration, and sometimes, admiration tinged with envy. I felt my heart race, not with fear, but with a strange thrill. I was finally stepping into the world as myself, or at least, the self I had been forced to discover. At first, the fear lingered. I walked through crowded streets, aware of every eye, every whisper, every subtle shift in attention. But unlike before, I didn't cower. I adjusted my posture, lifted my chin, and moved with a newfound grace that felt authentic, even if it had taken the last few days to develop. The world had changed its perception of me, yes, but I had changed too. The first encounter came sooner than expected. A colleague I hadn't seen since the transformation spotted me on the street. Her eyes widened in shock, then softened with recognition. "Is that really you?" she asked, hesitating. My pulse quickened for a fraction of a second, the old fear rising. But instead of panicking, I smiled. "Yes," I said, my voice steady, confident, feminine yet unmistakably mine. Her reaction was a mixture of awe and curiosity. She laughed softly, a sound of genuine delight. "You look incredible." "Really?" I didn't expect. Her hesitation made me realize something profound. The world would adjust, but I had to lead the adjustment. I had to own it. And in that moment, I did. Every interaction afterward was a lesson in empowerment. Friends, neighbors, even strangers. Some reacted with surprise, others with admiration, a few with thinly veiled judgment. And for the first time, none of it fazed me. I had discovered a strength I hadn't known existed, the ability to exist authentically, to walk confidently in a body and identity that was both new and mine. Lunch at a small cafe brought its own set of challenges. I ordered, aware of the barista's lingering glance, the way other patrons' eyes occasionally flicked in my direction. But instead of panic, I embraced it. My movements were deliberate, graceful, my smile confident. When someone complimented my dress, I responded with a quiet, self-assured thank you, and the words felt like a triumph. Every compliment, every glance, every whispered remark became a testament not to my vulnerability, but to my growth. The true test came when I ran into someone from my past, a friend who had known me for years before the transformation. Her eyes widened, disbelief flickering across her features. "Oh wow. You're different," she stammered. My old instinct would have been to apologize, explain, retreat. But now, I stood tall. "Yes," I said simply, smiling. "I'm different. And I'm happy with it." Her reaction was unexpected. She laughed softly, almost in relief, then nodded. "You look amazing. Really." That simple acknowledgement, without judgment or fear, felt like validation. Not from her, but from myself. I realized then that empowerment wasn't about convincing the world, it was about accepting myself fully, unapologetically, and living that truth. By mid-afternoon, I was no longer just navigating the world, I was inhabiting it. Every movement, every interaction, every glance reinforced the fact that I had become someone stronger, someone capable of embracing the unknown. The streets, once intimidating, now felt like a runway, each step a declaration of self-confidence. Even the mundane became thrilling. A walk through the park, the laughter of children, the soft breeze brushing against my arms, all of it was magnified by the awareness of my new self. I noticed the subtle ways people reacted, a smile here, a respectful glance there. And I realized that the fear I had carried for days was dissolving, replaced by a quiet, fierce joy. Evenings were no longer a time of hiding. I met a few acquaintances for coffee, and though initial surprise flickered in their eyes, my confidence, my presence, carried the conversation. I laughed freely, moved naturally, and for the first time, felt the exhilaration of being fully, unapologetically visible. I had become someone both new and familiar, a bridge between my past self and this emerging identity. Reflection came later that night, back in the sanctuary of my room. I sat on the edge of my bed, looking in the mirror, but this time, not with fear or curiosity. With pride. With acceptance. The girl staring back at me was me. Every curve, every line, every subtle expression was part of a story I had lived, endured, and now embraced. I whispered softly to my reflection, I survived this. I grew. I discovered something incredible. About the world, and about myself. And I meant it. The journey had been terrifying, confusing, exhilarating, and intimate. It had forced me to confront every fear, every insecurity, every limiting belief. And through it all, I had discovered resilience, curiosity, strength, and joy. In the days that followed, I carried this lesson with me into every interaction, every space, every corner of my life. The world could stare, whisper, judge, but I had found the power of authenticity, the courage to embrace transformation, and the joy of inhabiting my own skin without apology. By the end of that week, I was no longer the person who had woken up terrified in my bedroom. I was her, the confident, playful, daring, and empowered version of myself. The journey was far from over, but I had taken the first step, and it was exhilarating. Sitting by the window that night, the city lights twinkling like stars, I smiled at my reflection. This is who I am, I whispered. Not who I was. Not who anyone expects me to be. But me. Truly me. And in that moment, I understood the truth of the gift, the transformation, the challenge that had begun as fear and uncertainty. It wasn't just a change of body. It was a journey into self-discovery, into empowerment, into embracing a life I had never dared to imagine. I had been feminized overnight, yes. But in doing so, I had discovered strength, resilience, confidence, and a joy I had never known. And for the first time, I wasn't scared. I was alive. I was me. Fully, unapologetically, undeniably me.